Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the World Crypto Network. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on our lovely ritual that we like to do on Sunday, which is, of course, talk about Bitcoin. Can you guys hear that? Oh, I don't know. Oh, yes, that is the sound of plebs everywhere getting wrecked from BK telling people how to buy Ripple live on CNBC Fastlane. People, that's the fun that's happening out there today. So if you didn't think that there was enough people in Ripple yet, just wait till the mainstream comes in. So we're going to be talking about that and all sorts of other fun and amazing subjects here, people, like the Chinese miner crackdown, debit cards getting shut down, Bitpay, but it's not all crazy. We got some good stuff too. It's not all negative, people. There's some good stuff happening out there, I assure you. Let's go through just a couple of announcements real quick. I actually went ahead and finally built myself a little mini profile website. You guys can find that at theonevortex.com, all spelled out, complete with a little bitty tip button on there too, if you guys want to check that out. That'd be great. Another news here, another announcement. We actually reached over an $800 billion market cap, you guys. It's getting real crazy out there, over 830 billion or something at this point. So starting to lose track a little bit. Thought I'd mention that because that is one heck of a milestone as we inch closer and closer to the ever popular the dreaded $1 trillion market cap, because I tell you what, guys, from there, we're going to go right up to 10 trillion. It's going to get crazy. And then a very happy birthday to Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen, the Genesis block born on January 3rd, 2009. That just happened a few days ago. I have to mention it. It's very important date. Everything.
Happy birthday to you.
It's so important that we just have to basically we have to classify all time now after that as AB, after Bitcoin. So very cool stuff. Another announcement real quick. Mr. David Harding gave a real great explanation of Lightning channel factories on Stack Exchange. I have the link there in the show notes. I want everybody, request everybody to check that out, because that's some really fascinating stuff on how Bitcoin or how Lightning is going to scale and how it's going to grow super fast. These channel factories are going to allow for some amazing things to make Lightning grow faster than you guys can ever anticipate. And then finally, we have a petition going on right now for Coinbase to go ahead and prioritize segwit implementation. We're not demanding that they implement segwit right now or anything like that, but we are asking, please, Coinbase, can you please at least prioritize segwit in the top 5 priorities of Coinbase and GDAX? Because Brian Armstrong went ahead and went on the national television telling everybody that segwit is not important to them for their customers. Their customers are telling them that segwit is not important. Well, I think we can go ahead and dispel that rumor already with over 2,500 signatures on Coinbase now and growing. The next step we want to get to is 5,000 signatures. So that's going to be really amazing. We got Russell. Let's go ahead and start introducing everybody, because we just got a new panelist in here. Let's start with Mr. Russell himself, Russell Spears. Russell, how you doing?
Wow. I just managed to log in, man. You throw me in the mix.
Right away, right, man. That's how we do it.
Well, look, I'm what you consider a generalist about things. I'm interested in social justice and how this implicates.
Russell, I don't want to start the topics yet, man. We're just doing introductions. Sorry, Russell.
Shoot it. Hey, Russell Spears, right? How you
say
doing?
Hi to the world. Everybody got to follow Russell Spears on Twitter. He's got a lot of great comments, and I'm really excited to have him on the show today. He's been making the rounds on the podcast, so you guys definitely want to check him out. I'll have his Twitter link in the show notes. Next, we got Mr. Pierre Rashard. Pierre, the new CEO of Coinbase. Pierre, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Vortex?
Very well, Pierre. Loving your commentary lately, loving your Noted podcast, loving the tweets, all good stuff. Really great stuff, especially guys, check out on the World Crypto Network. Mad Bitcoins interviewed Pierre about his recent tweets about what the next CEO of Coinbase should actually do, and they are amazing. It is an amazing interview. You guys got to check that out, both his Noted podcast and the Mad Bitcoins interview. Next, we got Mr. Gabriel DeVine joining us. Once again, Gabriel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure and an honor to be joining you all.
Thank you so much for being here, Gabriel. We appreciate it. And we got Mr. Francis Pouliot. Finally, last but not least, how you doing, Francis?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Vortex, for having me. And hello, everyone.
All right, awesome start. We got some amazing panelists, guys. Here we have over 550 live viewers already, so we're going to get right into these topics. First of which we can't ignore Ripple, ladies and gentlemen. As much as it pains me these days to even say the name Ripple, we're going to go ahead and talk about and see what the panelists think about this crazy thing that's going on right now, that people are telling people how to buy right there live on national television. So we'll start out maybe with Pierre. Pierre, Rashard, what is your comments on the rise of Ripple? What is your take on? I mean, we know that the Ripple's getting a lot of hate and things like that. So go ahead and, you know, maybe as unbiased as you can, give us your thoughts as a Bitcoin maximalist, as unbiased as a Bitcoin maximalist can be. Your thoughts on Ripple. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the main criticism that we hear from Bitcoiners is that Ripple is more centralized than Bitcoin is, and that even quite a few other altcoins are. And that is definitely true, but ultimately I think that a coin just has to be decentralized enough to have a credible monetary policy. And so one could definitely make the argument that Ripple is decentralized enough such that they will not increase the number of XRP that are in existence once Ripple, the company, runs out of them in 5 or 10 years or whatever it is. But that aside, I think that the more interesting issue from both a price perspective and kind of a long-term, like, where are we going with Bitcoin and hyper-Bitcoinization, is the quality of the buyers and the quality of the hodlers that are getting into XRP. And frankly, from the conversations I've had with them, they are very low quality. And so the moment that the price and the sentiment turns around, you're going to have a epic dump. And that's kind of in line with what we've seen XRP do in the past. And so I expect that we'll just see that happen again. It's unfortunate for people who are new to crypto to be entering it in the worst possible manner, which is by buying XRP at the top based on what CNBC told them to do. But it's just how natural selection works. That's all I got to say on that.
It's true. I mean, this is Darwinism at its best, right? This is Darwinism in finance. It's just I just can't help but feel a little bit of empathy, man. When I saw BK show people Poloniex, Poloniex live on national television, I definitely my heart sank a little bit for those new people that are going to inevitably get crushed from buying at the top. Let's go to Mr. Russell Spears. Russell, what do you think about this crazy rise to Ripple?
Well, I think all of this is predicated on this idea that medium of exchange is the important value proposition. I think we've lost ourselves on this issue. Also on the issue of private of anonymity in terms of transaction and privacy. These two issues are, I think, related to the fact that we're basically disempowered as a population. Once we find ourselves in more power, actually having power, privacy issues and things like that will basically come in line with that. But the problem with this Ripple thing is that people are still thinking about blockchain as a medium of exchange. The real proposition here is a store of value. Everything that Bitcoin could be, any blockchain could be, is going to be built on that fact alone.
Yep. And now of course, there's many use case scenarios, right, for all of these cryptocurrencies, these blockchains and things like that. But really, store of value is on many orders of magnitude more valuable and physically, like in market cap, and just to society itself.
And that's the point. And that's the point. Like all this other possible innovation that you could get out of blockchain, in my opinion, is going to be anchored to the best store of value. And to me, right now, it's clearly Bitcoin. And so this is the whole gist of this thesis. I have this the Hydra thesis for this Bitcoin is that you're just going to have these many heads of these innovations that are going to be propped up, and it's going to be fixed to the main network, anchored to it because of these airdrop forks that we actually buy in and hold. That will create a network that's congealed, and I think the most powerful proposition that could be made.
Very interesting stuff. The Hydra theory from Russell Spears, ladies and gentlemen, the Bitcoin Hydra theory. You guys got to check that out. Let's go with Gabriel next. Gabriel, so what do you think, man? I mean, isn't every bank going to use Ripple? I mean, why wouldn't they use Ripple, right? It's the latest technology. It's super fast. It's the hottest thing. Why isn't every bank going to go ahead and adopt Ripple, Gabriel?
They already have digital currency. Well, I mean, XRP is just more fiat, right? I mean, it's just a centralized company. It actually takes some power out of the bank's hands. So understandably, they're pretty skeptical about it. I'm not seeing a lot of firm statements from financial institutions actually wanting to jump on board with this project. But that aside, even if they do, and there are efficiencies to be gained in some part of their back office, and banks increase their bottom line in part of their part of their business model by 7% here or even 11% there, that is virtually to empty. It's essentially non-effective on regular people anywhere. In fact, it could have a negative effect by increasing financialization, by making it slightly more profitable to defraud the public on a large scale, which is, as we know, the central premise of central banking and fiat currencies issued by governments. So I think that Ripple's real value is in familiarizing an additional subset of the populace who has not swallowed the red pill of Austrian economics to understand that different denominations of assets exist, that Bitcoin exists, that other digital currencies exist, and they're not all the same, as borne out by price charts. And so, somebody who has a bag right now of Ripples, shoved in there at the top of the chart, and who's down whatever 50% now or whatever it is. I haven't looked at the chart. I'm not really, to be honest, I'm not paying much attention to Ripple. I did one tweet about it, and I just kind of lolled basically because it's not even close to Litecoin, Monero, these other altcoins, which I don't even carry those bags, but at least they're genuine, cryptographically secured, moderately decentralized projects that are kind of trying to copy Bitcoin and maybe adding some features onto them, and they're genuine projects that are not full-on frauds or scams. The same can't be said for Ripple. So coming back to my point, Ripple's value is in familiarizing a subset of the populace that believes in fraudulent economic premises with digital currency in general, and holding and speculating on currency innovation. I have the strong impression that all of the bag holders right now holding Ripple are going to be selling, 99% of them will be selling their Ripple within the next 18 months, because they'll see that Bitcoin greatly outperforms, and they'll be studying during all that time. So now they've taken the step, they've taken the plunge into the world of currency competition with the nation state. They'll then all realize that they're in the wrong one, and they'll buy
Gabriel.
Bitcoin. So that's cool. Yes.
Gabriel, do you think that actually the problem here is that the people that are new to this space are convinced that that medium of exchange is what's going to happen here and what's the important value proposition?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct in having said that, and I completely agree with it. That really is the technical sort of detail of what I just mentioned about fraudulent economic theory. So I consider Austrian economic theory to be solid and based in fact and actual real life and human economic activities, as borne out in a book like Human Action by Ludwig von Mises. So I think that, like a classic Keynesian or even neoclassical economic theory, which is, a lot of which is based on macroeconomic misconceptions, is being, it tends to emphasize demand and medium of exchange for currency and money in society. And I completely agree with what you said about store value. That's a far more Austrian concept of savings and store value being the basis upon which you can build a monetary good in an economy.
Yep. So it seems like so far the panelists are agreeing that Ripple is definitely taking advantage of the new users, of the novices, of people that have no idea what the heck they're buying, especially when they're just going through CNBC and all of a sudden Mr. BK tells them how to buy Ripple on Poloniex. So maybe maybe most of the people in Ripple are going to be very, very weak-handed. And if that's the case, then whenever there is the slight bit of sell pressure, then that is going to sell. But of course, then there is the huge amount of artificial pressure that's there because of the amount of coin that's actually locked up, right? So they artificially can create all sorts of price whatever they want. So far, at this point, the way that Ripple works, from my understanding, is that they can, because they can control the XRP like they do, they and the supply, they can make the price whatever they want whenever they want, right? They can just release.
There's like 55 million, right? There's like 55 billion locked up.
Billion, yeah,
55 billion, yeah.
With a B, people, so they can sell some out, print some more, sell some out, print some, however they want. This is what Gabriel meant when he said digital fiat. But I'm quite curious to see what Francis thinks about all this crazy information about Ripple so far. Francis, what do you think about the discussion so far about Ripple, and what are your thoughts about on this crazy rise, and are all of these new people just going to get hurt?
I'm kind of disappointed that I still have to think about Ripple, because one of the first times I went to a Bitcoin conference back in 2014, I wasn't interested in any altcoin other than Ethereum because it had been launched in Montreal, partly at the Bitcoin Embassy before Toronto. So I was at the booth of Ripple, and I was really kind of talking to the guy, and I couldn't understand how Ripple worked or why it had a token or how is it a crypto. And I felt so stupid. I was in Bitcoin. I had just been hired by the Bitcoin Embassy, and I was really trying to get it. And 4 years later, I just started thinking about Ripple again, last week after it pumped. And I was like, okay, this is one of those cases where I wasn't wrong. I just didn't get it. Okay, so let's talk about something more fundamental. Let's take a step back. Okay, so why is it, for example, that we say that Bitcoin is a good long-term value proposition, that Bitcoin is a good thing for hodling? And it kind of comes to the reason, to the concept of why is it that we can't just counterfeit Bitcoin and make a new Bitcoin to use Bitcoin? Is because there is a symbiotic kind of self-reinforcing relationship between kind of the features that make Bitcoin great, right? Being censorship resistant, being decentralized, being this store of value, and the network effects that are around it. So you can't just, if you copy Bitcoin's tech, you get Dogecoin, and Dogecoin doesn't work because it's not secure, and it's not secure because it doesn't have any network effects, right? So this is one of my thesis. For example, if you compare that to Ethereum as well, you can use Ethereum on a private network, on a private VPN, and get pretty much all the same benefits as the main chain, because whatever you were doing didn't need mining, didn't need censorship resistance in the first place. So let's talk about Ripple in this light, okay? So Ripple, if you look about it, it is actually quite interesting financial technology. I'm also in fintech. I'm not only in crypto and blockchain. I hang out a lot in the fintech circles here and investments and so forth. And as far as fintech is concerned, Ripple is pretty advanced. Ripple is pretty cool. You can think of it as kind of I always kind of refer to my clients and to people kind of open transactions. Back in the day, it was kind of this financial cryptography library which had all these kind of functions, and you could issue coins and stuff like that, and you could kind of plug it into any consensus model you wanted, or run it on a server or something like that. So Ripple has these features that I could see, as Gabriel was saying, as a backend technology to replace Swift. I'm sure they could be a contender. However, I don't see any use for the token. And let's talk about the token, because this is what's pumping it. This is what people are holding, okay? So think about it like this. If a bank wants to use some kind of Ripple-based technology to do a consortium of bands between the corresponding banking partners, why the heck would they buy into the Ripple existing pre-mined distribution, which is a huge legal liability, which is hugely unfair? I mean, they have no incentive. What they would do is just say, hey, we're just going to take Ripple, and instead of having this useless token as some kind of spam prevention thing, we're just going to do what we're going to do anyway. We're just going to close the access to instead of having Ripple's unique node list, we're just going to have our own node list, which is kind of like a sidechain in a way, right? So Ripple's kind of destiny is to become this competitor to sidechains, or to R3 or Hyperledger, which are just these technology stacks that can be deployed. who's going to be deploying these Ripple solutions for the banks? Obviously, it's going to be Ripple Labs. Ripple Labs is going to be consulting with all the financial institutions, implementing their private things. And when you think about coins, I mean, you need to stop thinking, oh, it has this feature, it has this market. It's like, how is the feature going to create network effect? Like, what makes it that people don't sell Ripple over time? And like, you know, how is it that the features of this blockchain you're studying are transferring into actual demand? It's scarce, you know. I mean, is it scarce? First of all, with Ripple, we know it's not scarce. We know they can print, you know, pretty much. They have this huge runway, right, to devalue Ripple over time. So, but just forget about the scarcity of Ripple and distribution. Like, what is it about the features that generates actual demand for people that are going to huddle long term? And Ripple has none of that. Okay, so like the Ripple people are making these strawman arguments. Oh, you know, they're just like Bitcoin. They think our technology is not good. We're evil. Blah blah blah. And people are trying to attack me with all sorts of weird angles. So see, you're a hypocrite. You want to push the Lightning Network towards the bank, but you say Ripple is bad because of banks. No, Ripple is great. If a bunch of banks want to come together and experiment on this backend technology for settlements and clearing, and like have some sort of payment app on top between their users and like settle balances in the backend, which is what people want to do anyway for sidechains, that kind of stuff, go ahead and do it. But if you're a holder of Ripple, you're just a bag holder, which is making the millionaires, which are the founders of Mt. Gox, billionaires. And, you know, there's no fundamental value in the Ripple token. It can be forked at any time. It can be copied at any time for a private like chain. And you can bootstrap a Ripple network in a few days. Like, the reason why you can't copy Bitcoin is you can't re-bootstrap like Bitcoin again, right? So in the case of Ripple, I mean, you get a few corporations who say, hey, let's do a new chain, let's distribute it this way. We're going to have all sorts of incentive packages for users to buy into that. And, you know, they're going to just create a new Ripple from scratch. So, you know, you have
can't copy Bitcoin because you can't copy and paste value.
Exactly. So you can't copy the network effect of Bitcoin, and the network effect of Ripple relies on a few handshake deals in a hotel, which can be copied at any time. Fin.
Yep. So a lot was said there, Francis, and I definitely encourage everybody to if Francis talks too fast for you, go ahead and rewind the stream and put that at half speed, because there is so much important things that Francis laid out for you guys, ladies and gentlemen, right there, right here, right now. He just laid out the proposition of Ripple, why banks would want Ripple, how they're going to actually make money off Ripple, and if really Ripple, how and will it succeed and how. You know, Francis just laid that out. So just a couple of quick, you know, recaps, like the properties that make the properties of sound money that make something that you want to hodl, right, like gold or like Bitcoin, do not exist in Ripple, right? Ripple is a fintech program, though. It is a fintech, one of these new, you know, fintech ideas for the banks that maybe be able to save them some percentages and maybe make some type of, you know, settlement layer a little bit easier for the banks and things like that. But it is not a blockchain. This is a fintech technology made up of distributed databases and things like that. This is, you know, not an actual decentralized blockchain. So when people try to compare throughput rates, right, of Bitcoin and Ripple, it's nonsensical. You can't do it. It's like trying to compare a throughput rate of a hard drive on a network server with all the latency to a regular hard drive on your local computer, right? You can't do it. It's just completely nonsensical, completely doesn't work. So, you know, Bitcoin is a little bit slow right now, obviously, but it is a truly decentralized blockchain, right? For censorship resistance. So Ripple is going to be faster, and that's you know, that's great for now, great for banks. But just understand that you can't compare them apples to apples. They are completely different things. It's like trying to compare, you know, Bitcoin to a SQL database. But go ahead, Gabriel.
I have a question. I have a question for Pierre. How will hyper-Bitcoinization and payment channel and other layer 2 payment technologies affect the demand for payment throughput financial institutions like banks?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that, let's assume that there's no layer 2 in the sense of Lightning and payment channels and whatnot. And so basically the math that Saifedean Ammous did is that we would have up to 600 central banks, because that is the total number of clearing transactions you could have per day between, you know, if everyone was doing one transaction to every other person, then that would be 600 central banks on the Bitcoin network. And then from there, like, you would have it like it was during the gold standard, where essentially banks have a reserve of Bitcoins and they issue their own their own money substitute that is denominated in Bitcoins. And, you know, you have Visa network, and we can talk about that shit later. But it's Bitcoin denominated credit cards and debit cards and all of that. And all of these payments would be occurring on layers that, granted, are not cryptographically secured, but ultimately are secured by the same money supply and the same monetary policy as Bitcoins. But the promise of Lightning is that we can have a layer 2 that is cryptographically 100% reserved, is decentralized, peer-to-peer, instant, and low fee. And so I think that if we can bring that onto mainnet in 2018, and we can start to show the promise of Lightning beyond just a GIF posted on Twitter, that the noobs who come in won't look at a chart put out by Ripple's marketing department that shows, you know, 5,000 transactions per second or whatever, and be deluded into thinking, oh, look, this is so much better than Bitcoin. Because ultimately they're comparing they're trying to compare two monies by looking at the stats for the implementation details of their payment networks, which is like orthogonal to the quality of the money. So I think that once we have a like Bitcoin native layer 2 that Lightning promises to be, that it'll be much easier to onboard all these users who for some reason think the payments is the end all be all of a money, when really it's, you know, kind of the store value of and the monetary policy is much more important than the implementation details of the payments. But it'll ease them into Bitcoin. That's how does that answer your question, Gabriel?
It absolutely does. And if you could repeat the point that you said was orthogonal, that was a lot of information all at once. Can you repeat that? And then I'd love to hear what Russell has to say.
Yeah, that was a good point, Pierre. The actual you know, the payment network itself being orthogonal to the value proposition of the money itself. Go ahead, Pierre.
Right, because you can have payment networks that are denominated in a currency without you settling to that currency's ultimate ledger, you know, with every payment made. And so that's how like the US dollar works. Like the US Federal Reserve maintains a system called FedWire, and that is kind of like the final settlement, and everything is built on top of that, whether it's ACH or Visa is built on top of ACH, and there's all sorts of different layers, and each layer has different properties, both in scaling and consumer protection, in throughput, and in kind of whether it's push or pull, or if it's a credit system, or if it's not a credit system. And so all of these things and their scalability, the scaling of the payments is entirely different from the scaling of the money itself, which is that how many people assign value to this money, and how many people think that agree with its monetary policy and buy into it as a store of value and as a unit of account. It's two different questions. And I actually do want to point out that, you know, we were using the phrase medium of exchange, but there's actually a difference between a medium of exchange and a method of payment. And a method of payment is the actual, like, you know, whether you're using the Bitcoin network or Lightning network or Visa or ACH, those are the payment method of payment. The medium of exchange, technically speaking, is what in a non-barter transaction, right, where a money is being used, what money are people agreeing to having to denominating the liability that's created in a transaction? So when you buy your hamburger for $5, you create a $5 liability. And so we you know, because $5 or the dollar is our medium of exchange, we denominate that in dollars, but they could be anything. And you could have two people who are trading back and forth goods and services, but ultimately their liability nets to zero. And so they don't ever actually make a payment. But they all along, they were maintaining their liability in a specific denomination. And that's the medium of exchange, not how is the transaction ultimately settled.
Look, I want to push back a little bit on the assumptions here. This still I think we as a group, as a community, I think you guys, the network here, does great with this in terms of trying to bring out the bigger, larger picture here that's evolving. But, you know, again, this whole discussion is being dominated. I think we as a community have to be very clear about what the real value proposition is. A store of value. If I can have a store of value that's secure, that only I have control of my value, nobody else can debit it, close it, none of that junk. And then I could go out and buy Chuck E. Cheese tokens if I needed to. Or I could go out and I could use Zimbabwean dollar in their hyperinflation period if I'm going to use it for a second at a time. It's not the medium of exchange. It is clearly the anchor that matters, the value, the store of value that all this other innovation is going to just start gathering around. I know a lot of people are suspicious of these, a lot of these tokens that are forking off from Bitcoin. And not for nothing, they're doing it in the wrong way. They have to make sure they have buy-in by the community. If the community sells those tokens, it's now a hostile fork. Litecoin and some of these other projects, which I think we're very sympathetic. We all love Charlie Lee. He's a good guy. But at the end of the day, even Litecoin is hostile to Bitcoin because it's not participating in, I think, a larger token system connected to the store of value. And, you know, look, it is a test environment. I'll give you that. But it's not connected. I think, if anything, take it, fork it off from Bitcoin, give the people that also have right now a stake in Bitcoin, a stake in Litecoin, and every one of these other altcoins could be pushed out of this market, cleanse it.
Yep. So let me just, I guess I just want to finish this topic off with the fact that we want to, make sure that people understand that the store of value proposition for Bitcoin really is this most important thing to us. Just the ability to have our own money that's censorship resistant, that the government can't take away. The average person is just not going to understand that because they don't even understand how dollars work in their bank account. But we hope that people watching this stream and streams like this, can reach out to those people and explain to them like why we're here in the first place. This is why I only follow one person on Twitter, right? The Federal Reserve, to try to continue to bring awareness back to the real reason why we're all here in the first place, and that is to change money, not to make banks be able to transfer money between themselves easier, right? So that's a big thing I want people to take away. And look, Ripple, Hyperledger, R3, all of these things, they're all fintech, right? And they're all going to do interesting things, and that's fine. But when you're talking about money, when we're talking about money, people, our money, our wealth that we're going to save, that we're going to have for our children, that we're going to pass down to generation to generation, that is. There's nothing that can compare to the importance of that. And that is, for that, we use Bitcoin. And so I just want to get that point across. But let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. We kind of took a little bit of time with that, but it's an interesting topic. We want to bring the knowledge out there. We want to let everybody know our opinions and have people make the decisions for themselves. So guys, thanks again so much for joining us so far. We have over 1,000 live viewers, tons of people in the chat, just having a great time. Lot of topics to go still. So let's go ahead and get right into it. If you guys could please give us a thumbs up, or if you guys are new here to the World Crypto Network, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to get all of our information up to date. So let's go right with it. The next topic, ladies and gentlemen, is it brought a lot of fear, I think, a little bit of fear to the new people into the Bitcoin community. But I think ultimately we're going to find out that this is a good thing. And as we get into the discussion here, the China over there, they've recently banned the ICOs. They're an authoritative state, and now they've recently released some information that they are going to use the local communities and local police force and local authorities and things like that to gather information about Bitcoin miners. They want to know how much electricity Bitcoin mining is taking, how much profits they're making, all the typical stuff that an authoritative regime wants to know. And so we've just gotten word about this yesterday or the day before or so. And so I kind of want to get the panelists' opinions on this and what they think about this, about miners leaving China, about China, cracking down further on mining. And so let's go ahead and go with Gabriel first on this. Gabriel, what do you think about China cracking down on these miners, and is this a good thing for Bitcoin in the long run? And do you think that China will ever come back with further regulations in the future to try to compete?
It's a very complex issue with China, and I think that the community has really been contending with mixed signals from the regime. in Beijing for the past 5 or more years. And I have been following a CN Ledger on Twitter. Very amazing resource, because this individual is one of the few people actually directly and literally translating some of the Chinese media and government announcements, which there's a significant overlap there. But it really helps us Westerners to maintain a bit of a bit of awareness about what's happening over in East Asia. And this is a typical mixed signal type of thing, right? I mean, it's very challenging to suss out exactly what is being asked. The miners are not being shoved out. The central authority is merely directing regions in China to encourage the mining operations to leave. So basically, it works as a warning. For all we know, it could be reversed or what do I want to say? Intensivized, right? It could become stricter, or it could fall totally off the radar in the future. We don't know. So it's a real mixed signal. I mean, certainly cautionary for the mining industry in China, obviously. And I have been hearing that mining companies, you see rumors around Twitter, especially, that mining companies in China are arranging for exit. So as far as the impact on the ecosystem, I would say this is generally bullish. There have been a lot of concerns, as well as even more, in my opinion, concern trolling from the likes of people like Vinay Gupta when I interviewed him 2 years ago, a year and a half ago on this very channel about when we talked about Bitcoin, he's was essentially saying that the Chinese government had taken over all of the mining, and it was without any proof at all. It was actually, in my opinion, completely ridiculous. And he's been proved wrong since then, but he still contends that he made good points. I think it's a typical ether huff or denial. But so in that sense, the miners in China being incentivized to move their operations out is just going to further decentralize the industry, which is a powerful, bullish signal for the Bitcoin ecosystem and sort of political economy. And I'm sure Francis will have some interesting things to say, since Quebec seems to be proving to be one of the top, if not the top, destination for mining operations due to the availability of very inexpensive hydroelectric power. Although I have heard that Germany is paying customers to use electricity because they have overflow due to their natural electricity production.
Very interesting points, Gabriel. Let's go with Pierre next. We'll wait for Francis to make sure he's got everything set up. We'll go with Pierre next. So what do you think, Pierre, on this news of China asking for more information and miners leaving China? Do you think that Bitcoin will suffer any type of huge huge losses in actual hashing power, or and Bitcoin will just come to a spiraling halt, or what do you think, Pierre? I mean, it's just before you answer, Bitcoin did make absolutely huge record increases, in almost every single month over month last year in hashing power. But go ahead, Pierre. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just to respond to the concern trolling that Gabriel brought up about Vinay saying that the Chinese government controls Bitcoin because of the mining and whatnot. We, in November, with the attempted hard fork of SegWit 2x, we kind of came to the clear conclusion that Bitcoin is not under the thumb of a mining cartel. And despite 90% of the hash rate agreeing to do a hard fork, It didn't happen. And so I think that the likes of Vinay and anyone else who thinks that miners are somehow the final authority on what Bitcoin is needs to really closely examine what happened in November and think through the implications of Bitcoin being a peer-to-peer network governance and not a miner democracy. So that's point A. I mean, I don't want to, mining is important. I don't want to belittle it too much, but I think people dramatically blow it out of proportion as like being the end all be all. Miners are hired by the network consensus to perform a specific function. They're not the network consensus per se. So putting that aside, I think that the other piece of concern trolling that we get is, oh, look, the government intervening in China is what is driving decentralization. How ironic. Doesn't that show how stupid Bitcoiners are? Because ultimately they need government intervention to break up a mining cartel. I think that that is an absurd statement given how much electricity is subsidized by the government in China. They created this distortion in the first place. They caused this centralization to happen. And now that they're deciding to no longer subsidize it, I don't consider that to be government intervention. I consider that to be a rollback of government intervention. And so it makes sense that we go back to a more decentralized global mining community rather than a China-centric one. So good on the Chinese government for stopping their intervention in the electricity markets in this regard. They really should completely liberalize it and have their electricity markets be a free market like in many other countries. I think that it would benefit their people and their industries a lot, reduce the amount of distortion they have. And so I think it's great for Bitcoin and it's great for China.
I'm sorry, I got to jump in on this and just push back again. Look, we make this assumption that we have a free market. We know this is dominated by corporate monopolies. And right now, the mining networks are becoming corporate monopolies themselves and affecting adoption and the direction of this technology. So I think pushing back and trying to find ways of decentralizing our network is still important, at least to push back.
How are they affecting adoption?
Well, I mean, clearly we see that there's a collusion between, the mining networks and these larger exchanges. And, look, at the end of the day, if they're not going to adopt segwit, that's going to hold us back. And we see the result of that. And,
yeah, I mean, well, that's definitely going to be one of the topics about how more and more companies are adopting segwit. But
yeah, and then on the Chinese part, I think China has been the last century. They've been trying to have a modern economy, and they keep tanking themselves. They had a run. They had a first. They were at the top of this in terms of influence and adopting Bitcoin, and they've constantly eroded their position by fighting it. So they made themselves irrelevant. I think when China makes these big moves, Bitcoin just brushes it off now. I think in terms of a community, it's much larger than China. China doesn't matter. China's hoping to matter. And, they're still struggling. They have a huge amount of infrastructure they built over the last century. They don't have the type of population that's a consumer engine. All of them are more my age. And people my age, we're not looking to spend money and throw money away in mindless consumption. That's what the younger generation does. And what they did is they killed themselves when they had that one-child policy. So they've consistently made bad decisions. And I'm hoping that at least my nation doesn't jump in to try to control this and corral this back into the arms of these corporate monopolies.
Yep, well said, Russell. Let's go with Francis here. He might have to drop out. His battery is running low. So, Francis, hopefully you can give us your thoughts before you fully and completely drop out there.
All right, but I still won't go too fast. Okay, so I'm going to try to speculate because what's really happening in China, I don't think is ever what gets filtered down to us, but we can have some kind of clues. So if you think about how the hydroelectric ecosystem and industry works in China, like what they did is they essentially built these dams that didn't have much demand for them, and they kind of built the dams before the demand was there in anticipation that the industry would get spurred and that factories would come and consume all this great and cheap electricity. So definitely Sorry, let me just put back the camera on. So definitely, at some point it is subsidized. It is subsidized. But what a lot of people are actually doing too is that you got to think about like the government is one of the sellers and distributors of electricity. So what some of the people are doing is they're reselling that electricity at lower rates, right, to get closer to what they're actually paying, trying to undercut basically the government and sell this electricity without giving the government its share. So this is what I think could be happening. And what China's doing now, and this probably they're going after the miners, saying, listen, you cannot sell the electricity at like under the rate that we're giving it to. You can't sell it outside of our kind of system. We need to tax it. We need to take a cut. And if you keep doing that, we're just going to shut you down. So I don't think I think this is probably one of the reasons why they're trying to find the miners, is just to make sure that they're kind of paying the government its cut. And when you think about it,
from what I hear, the Chinese government doesn't really have that much control to shut everybody down, that they still run. Am I right?
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm pretty certain they can, without any question, kind of shut down any mining operation they want.
Look, most of the mining operations are in rural areas and such, but and even Andreas Antonopoulos likes to say that, look, these miners can become very powerful and that they can control local police and things like that. But even that, it still though, the Chinese government, they have an army. The People's Bank of China can definitely roll in there if they want to. But go ahead, Francis.
Yeah. And I'm assuming like these rural areas, of course, benefit a lot from having like those big mining farms around. So everybody kind of shuts up, and like the local prefects will take a small bribe or something like that. And this is something that could definitely be happening. What I can confirm with certainty is that indeed miners are leaving China and they're coming en masse to Quebec and en masse to the rest of Canada. I've heard a lot about Iceland. I've heard about other countries in Europe. And this had such a crazy implication for Quebec that I was like, this is like such a huge visible sign of hyper-Bitcoinization that my job as a consultant has become my main function to find data centers for miners that are having literally boats of miners on their way. And I have to go prospect them. Why? Because we are sold out. Quebec is sold out. There is no more space for miners throughout the entire province. We literally need to go do some pretty heavy-duty prospecting. Like, I'm not going to say what my techniques are and what we're doing because this is how I make a living now. But I mean, definitely, like, just to give you an idea, even some transformers, there's a rumor that this guy just bought all the transformers on the market so that even if you make like a new data center, you can't like connect it. So he's just buying all the transformers. And I'm assuming there is like a huge bidding war for that. So what happened is that Quebec obviously has I'm sorry, Hydro-Quebec, but your estate monopoly, right? You're selling electricity, but much more expensive than it should be because we have these massive hydro dams and it's still super expensive. So we're producing surpluses, which cost us. I think one of the estimates was like multiple billions and billions, like over like I think it was like 1 billion a year. It costs us in electricity surplus because this is stuff that either we sell under the production rate, or we just open the valves of the dams and all that water that accumulates just runs out. So this is like a huge opportunity cost that we're not getting. And for the first time in 12 years, the Quebec government announced last month that they had the first reduction of surplus, and they conveniently credited these data centers that are popping up. But everybody knows that for the same amount of space, like a mining data center consumes like 10 times more than what that means is that this is literally money in people's pockets, right? Because hopefully they reduce the electricity rates, or hopefully they just don't ask a budget increase right at the next budget and they use that money instead. So to me, that was like beautiful, like super beautiful. And now this is something that's happening all over the world. And this is a direct result of, Chinese miners being afraid that they're going to lose their very, very low subsidized rates. And they need an alternative because most places, if you want to just plug really fast, you're going to end up paying a lot. You want to make sure that because the first time of the life of a miner, the first quarter is going to make more money than the year after, right? So you want to plug fast. So the mining industry right now is so exciting. It's crazy. It's like the Wild West. People are just trying to, make deals to make these big things happen, to do these big economies of scale, because you can really get a lot of money out of like your consulting and your foresight. And because if you can kind of make these huge savings for a miner that has like 10,000 miners en route and they're not plugged. And, you know, so yeah, it's just so crazy. I can't believe how the mining sphere is exploding in Canada. I'm so excited.
So let me ask
you need to show them that big empty building in Laval where they had the GM plant.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're thinking about. I mean, literally, like old like steel factories are like, oh, you guys have power, right? So you don't mind if we? Oh no, you don't mind. Okay, great. So these like steps. And one thing, this is what I see happening is that pot is becoming legal in Canada in about 6 months, and hopefully, if everything goes correctly, it's on schedule. And I didn't check the regulation, but knowing Quebec and Canada, I'm willing to bet that the pot has to be grown in Canada to be consumed in Canada, because we don't want that dirty pot from the criminal gangs elsewhere. And you know, obviously, there's going to be there's not going to be free trade on pot, like clearly. So in the winter, you're going to have to grow pot. In the winter, you're going to have to do hydroponic in the winter, and it's super expensive to do that, right? Normally, we just import, you know, tomatoes from California or Mexico. We don't grow tomatoes in the winter, but pot, we may have to. So there's going to be this, and obviously we already know the kind of, you know, there's some kind of symbiosis between pot growers and Bitcoin miners, obviously.
Yeah,
you know,
you can't even get yellow cheese, okay?
Yeah. So, I mean, I see all sorts of exciting things happening and innovation in the mining industry. And like, as Pierre said, I mean, I don't see that as like ironic. I don't think it's a government crackdown. I think it's just, maybe if they're trying to get their cut, but I think they're just kind of reducing the subsidies and the market's just reallocating resources somewhere more efficient.
Yeah, and that's a big point I wanted to say, is that this is just simply resource allocation, right? I mean, look, by the exchange, they left China to go into Japan, I believe, and then Bitmain is leaving to go into like Singapore or something. I mean, you know, these people are leaving China and they're going to other places where their businesses will be able to not only continue to succeed but thrive, especially in the places like Francis described there. So, look, Francis, let me just ask you one little quick question here. Hopefully you can answer before your battery dies. Do you then see some kind of fatal problem with the Bitcoin network as far as hashing power? I mean, because people are always, you know, they love the doom porn and everything like that, but you know, people are fearing like there's going to be just huge amounts of hashing power lost all at once. Do you see anything like that? How do you see the hashing power playing out? Do you see it even being affected at all? Negatively at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's like some legitimate risk factors. You know, if, for example, you have like a huge drop in the mining at the beginning of a difficulty retarget period, which makes the difficulty retarget period like, you know, 6 weeks instead of 2 weeks, and in that time there's a spam attack. Like, of course, these kind of sudden drops in the hash rate can be used, if timed correctly, by smart people like Coinbase as a way to kind of achieve some kind of effect. But generally speaking, no, I'm not at all in the philosophy of changing the proof of work algorithm. I don't see any problem with mining whatsoever. I think mining is great for the environment because it makes hydroelectric production more profitable versus the really, it is inconsistent hydroelectric power. So we can have a way to upsell the surplus. You really make a lot of efficiencies versus coal and nuclear, which have a much more stable output, so which are preferred for that reason in many places. Same thing with solar, same thing with all those kinds of grids. I don't see any problem with the centralization of mining power being temporarily. I mean, maybe in 3 years, I'm going to be the Jihan, right? And it's going to be centralized in Quebec. And, you know, I'm going to be, you know, blocking drive chains, you know, because I don't like Paul Storts or something like that.
Guys, listen, we have to have a UASF against Francis.
Yeah, you know, maybe that's going to happen. I don't know, but it's never going to last for too long. And there are such things as the laws of thermodynamics, and there's, you know, these things. It's really early and it's really illiquid, and there's like a lot of barriers to entry. You know, to people don't understand how high the barrier to entry is to like make your own chips and like smelt it and get a furnace, and you know, with Bitmain trying to bully everyone and like trying to, you know,
but here the big question is, what are you going to call it? You're going to call it the Toonie coin or the Looney coin?
The Looney coin, of course. The Looney coin, clearly, it sounds better. So yeah, so I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with mining, and I think, you know, it's business as usual.
Okay, yeah, and that's pretty much what I think everybody else on the panel for this subject as well thinks, that it's pretty much just business as usual. But Gabriel, I see you have a point, but before I go to you, I just really want to call out that point that Francis made. I really like, you know, I mean, Bitcoin really does incentivize the most clean and efficient energy production. I mean, this Bitcoin could create the world's largest green initiative. I mean, the planet's largest green initiative we've ever seen at the end of the day. So that really well could come to play. Gabriel, go ahead, please, and give us your thoughts.
A couple things. First of all, Rodolfo Novak, I believe, has joined us and given us a generous donation. Really appreciate that. And I want to shout out, we love Novak and his products. The main one that's been on the market for Open Dime.
Open Dime for life. And now they got Litecoin for Open Dime as well. They got Litecoin Open Dimes.
That's true. An incredible product. It's just a little USB drive, but it's a total bearer instrument with a private key on it, so you can just hand it to somebody. It's like a cash version of Bitcoin. They can spend it on the blockchain if they want, or they can just pass it on again. You keep loading it up and increasing the amount on there. They're inexpensive and very secure. Really great invention, and they are working on the Cold Card, which is like a microcomputer storage hardware wallet that is coming out, I believe, this year. So we're really looking forward to that. Love Open Dime. Thank you very much. So I actually wanted to just circle back and ask Russell what he was talking about. A monopoly is a situation where a single provider is the sole provider of a good or service in an industry. So which corporate monopolies were you referring to?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we know it's not just one single corporation. They're working in together. It's more like a duopoly, but that's just more semantics. Clearly, I think we don't have a free market. When we make a lot of arguments...
Which industry? Which industry are you referring to?
I would actually challenge anybody to find an industry that isn't dominated by monopolies. I think if at the end of the day, if you look at Bitcoin, that's the only free market activity I've ever seen.
Right, but I mean, the monopoly is not always bad. The monopoly is not always bad. For example, in mining, you can see a high concentration of mining equipment production in one person and say it's a monopoly, but there is no barrier to entry. I mean, there are barriers to entries in terms of money, right? So we need to raise a lot of capital or something like that, but there's nothing stopping you from devising miners like literally in your garage and plugging them in and having a super efficient miner to compete with Bitmain. So my take on that is that if the process is fair, then the outcome is fair. And if Bitmain tries to use this monopolistic position to do something bad, then that, you know, raises incentives for people to compete, to kind of tap into that anger, which is exactly what I've been doing by promoting Quebec as a destination and making money by consulting with it, right? So, I mean,
but you can't confuse that with an open market. Clearly, the centralization of mining in China is because it's heavily subsidized there, and that isn't a natural monopoly at all.
Yes, you're correct. Yeah, in that sense, it's not necessarily fair because of that subsidy, right? So I agree with you on that, for sure. And the great thing is to avoid an arms race, right? Because you would be tempted to ask for subsidies elsewhere to compete with China's subsidies, and you get this race to the bottom for just, you know, this is the complete opposite of what free trade and capitalism is supposed to be.
Look, at the end of the day, the real threat is that this technology gets in the hands of these monopolies. I think to the extent that we can focus and we can say, hey, we're going to go ahead and support decentralization to the extent that we can, then I think that's a better trajectory than simply just giving this stuff away. Because if you own that mining background, look, the miners don't care. They've already proven they don't care. If they mine Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, B-Trash, it doesn't matter to them. They're chasing those profits. And yeah, I think I'm agreeing with Vortex. At the end of the day, this kind of weird milieu is going to, you know, it's going to churn towards more efficiencies and energy use and efficiency gains. This kind of weird corporate competition, but it won't benefit the small guy. And this is what this is about. I want social justice. I don't want another Donald Trump going for president that came out of this mess.
So, but there's no, wow. Okay, I think that you're mixing some metaphors here, Russell. I don't agree with a lot of things you just said, but I do agree with some of the sentiment. But one might accuse me of arguing semantics, but these are not monopolies, as Francis pointed out. They're market dominant players. They're not monopolies. Monopolies depend on coercive regimes to maintain market dominance. That's not the case here. But I agree absolutely with what you said about an unfair situation from the Chinese subsidies of power. The great thing that I'm seeing here, which is not the case in a political system, which is not the case in a quote unquote democracy, is that the subsidies are only going to backfire. They only keep backfiring. So China has this subsidy. Now they have to pull it back because it's backfiring on them. And that's what happens when we have these centralized hierarchies with, you know, players. They're a monopoly on violence, which is what a government is, a genuine monopoly. They absolutely have no way to attack or undermine a network structure like Bitcoin. So I'm really not seeing this threat necessarily.
Well, even if you look at the U.S. budget, every bit of that, I'd say, is geared towards corporate subsidies. You know, so whether it's China or it's U.S. or any other country, I mean, we're really talking about a government that works for these corporations. And, you know, look, I love what B Gold's trying to do. I love what they're trying to do. They're trying to decentralize that back end. And if we could get that part, I think that'd be an important step towards economic justice. And so look, if you're going to rely, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think we can close out, you know, this topic with basically saying that I think we all agree that this will lead to further decentralization in the mining space. I think that this we all agree that this is not going to stop Bitcoin or harm Bitcoin like almost in any way. Yes, it does open up possibly open up a bit of an attack vector, but only a short term attack vector. And so I think that overall we pretty much agree that this is good for Bitcoin. So I think we can move on. We do want to get through at least one more topic before we leave here, because we got Mr. Tone Vase going to do his market analysis after this. We got to make sure that he can get in there. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, if anybody's going to have a monopoly, let's at least let's let Toad and Vase have a monopoly over trading. I mean, come on. All right, let's move on to the next topic, guys. We have over 1,200. We had over 1,200. We have over 1,100 viewers joining us live right now, guys. We're going to get through at least one more topic here. So thanks so much for joining us so far. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Thanks again so much to our awesome panelists and our guests for donating their time. So let's go ahead and move on to this final subject here, which is the debit card shutdown. So it looks like Wavecrest has shut down debit card services for a number of different companies, from Dwala to BitPay, a lot of these companies outside of the US. And so I want to get everybody's quick take on here. We'll try to keep it short here. Everybody's response, maybe just like a minute or two. We'll go first with Pierre. Pierre, what are your thoughts on this? And, you know, is this going to come to the US, or is this going to affect Bitcoin in the long term, or is this just going to, again, kind of like the mining topic, just incentivize more competition for these debit cards?
I'm going to give all my time to Francis because I don't really have anything interesting to say on this.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, Francis, please give us your thoughts on Wavecrest Visa using Wavecrest to shut down all of these cards.
Yeah, so the important thing to notice first is that Wavecrest was in a monopoly, in the sense that Wavecrest was the backend for pretty much all the debit card providers and companies, including Zappo and BitPay and ShakePay and all those companies. So what happens when you do a business with Wavecrest is basically they give you access to an API, and they allow you to kind of open on-the-fly bank accounts under your sub bank accounts to your bank account as a business, right? So BitPay would have like an account with Wavecrest, and every time you register for a Wavecrest card, a BitPay card, bank account on your behalf at Wavecrest. So I mean, it was never anything. You were always using the banking system. You always having a bank account. You may not know you had a bank account, but you had a bank account at Wavecrest, and you had been signed up by someone. So I don't necessarily see that business model as being super good for that reason. So yeah, I mean, Visa clearly has I don't know how Wavecrest managed to do that all this time. I'm assuming Visa didn't know and just figured out, or maybe they were using some proxies, because those kind of businesses that offer cash outs in debit cards, you know, all in casinos offer that. So that was a central point of failure. So you got all those businesses. I can't even imagine. I think there were some ICOs that were just essentially apps on top of Wavecrest. Like, oh, you have this new ICO debit card, which you can use to cash out any one of your cryptos. That was just basically a website with Shapeshift API and then Wavecrest API. Basically there. So, I mean, that's sad news, because a lot of people were using that kind of to cash out their Bitcoins in very private ways. So it's definitely a blow to the Bitcoin user experience in my opinion. And it's hard to compete, because the relationship with Wavecrest and the bank is what makes or break your business. You have no other business than your integration with Wavecrest. If you're doing a Bitcoin debit card, that is your sole function, is to fund someone else's Wavecrest account and try to do some arbitrage or trading fees on the exchange from Bitcoin to fiat. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty, it's a downer. But it was going to happen anyway, right? It was going to happen sooner or later. So that's what happens if you rely on a trusted third party for your business.
On a trusted, centralized third party, and for many businesses, they can just shut you down, and that's kind of a lot like Ripple. I can imagine applications being built on top of Ripple, and then them just changing the rules, be like, nope, you need this amount of Ripple to access our API and application, because they have changed the rules for several of their protocol properties in the past. So let's go next with Mr. Gabriel DeVine. What do you think about this, Gabriel? Are we going to see possibly maybe in the future some more debit cards, or is this just kind of like an inevitability was going to happen anyway, a kind of a clashing of Bitcoin up against this traditional financial system?
Yeah, this occurrence is somewhat shrouded in mystery. The word on the street is that Wavecrest, how did they phrase it? Wavecrest did not comply with Visa's.
It was know your customer.
Was it know your customer specifically?
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
I haven't heard that.
That's the report I got.
That's what I thought. Okay. That's what I heard, is that somebody didn't comply with the AML KYC.
Interesting. So yeah, the way that these companies work is it's centralized, so that Visa is the 800-pound gorilla, and they have the contract with Wavecrest, and then Wavecrest had one user who didn't identify themselves or something, and then boom, everybody gets their cards canceled. So I didn't realize this KYC. It's really interesting. It's wonderful to see this type of thing happen, even though there could be some individuals who were hanging their lifestyle on a single, debit card, which is very, very risky thing to do. But it's tough out there for the semi-banked in the world, and can't blame them for wanting to hold their wealth in sound money and not in government shit coins. So I think it's really great to see, once again, these hierarchical institutions attempting to, Visa, as far as they're concerned, they just don't want to lose their license, which is granted by the government. So once again, you just go up the next level of the hierarchy, the next level of the pyramid. So for them, they probably don't give a shit about Bitcoin. I mean, they might see it as a threat, but the income, the fees they get from Wavecrest are worth taking the risk and keeping them in the contract, maybe. But the KYC thing, it's conceivable that maybe they would give another company that wasn't in crypto a pass, and they crack down more because they're in Bitcoin. But we really don't know. It's once again shrouded in mystery, because these centralized institutions, the decision making comes down to one person, and Gabriel, it's a coercive paradigm.
Isn't that what you're describing? The problem with monopoly?
Absolutely. I mean, this is, yeah. I mean, I would say that monopoly is once again a bit of an exaggerated thing, but yeah, the problem of hierarchical institutions is more accurate, I would say, because once again, there's MasterCard, there's other companies. Monaco doesn't use Wavecrest, so their cards are fine. So this is not a complete blanket on the economy, but yes, the government has a monopoly on violence, and government has had a monopoly on the monetary systems and financial systems, and so they're the ones enforcing the KYC regulations, right?
No, look, KYC, that whole know your customer issue, we've been running for thousands of years without that, with our regular fiat, the physical currencies. They didn't know everybody's transaction. So that's not the issue. It's about keeping that monopoly, that power in the hands. And it's also, I think, not about government, because governments are always there to serve the people who own and dominate the economy. And that I call corporate monopolies.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, but that's not I think because they're serving the corporate interests, they're both at fault. That's the fascist system, right? That they work together hand in hand to oppress, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think we can definitely agree that the government has subsidized these corporate monopolies, by captured regulation and control of the financial system and things like that. So that's definitely a problem that we hope that Bitcoin can solve. And again, people, these issues that we're talking about here, this is why we got into Bitcoin. This is why we wanted to get into Bitcoin. To change these issues.
This just encourages everybody to move even quicker into Bitcoin and Bitcoin and get these payment channel networks up and stuff.
Yeah, but you know what? This actually speaks to what you said earlier, Gabriel, when you were talking about, how do we actually get these people to recognize that Ripple's just junk? It's that value proposition, the open, decentralized, permissionless, that kind of network's the one that we can rely on to have as a store of value. That's why Bitcoin has the value it does. And, to the extent that we move outside of that system, we're dealing with these corporate monopolies. Again, if we dominate the economy, we're going to have the government we need. They're going to be servicing us. They're going to forget about the corporatists to the extent that workers, democratically run worker cooperatives replace these other types of business forms, will be the owners of the economy. So to me, it's not government. And also, it's not about a medium of exchange again. I know that the conversation still kind of moves that way because at the end of the day, if I have control of my value, I'll go anywhere. I'll buy Subway tokens, whatever. Zimbabwe dollars. They're probably going to issue government fiat cryptos, and I'm going to be fine with that because that's not the important part.
Yeah, you kind of touch upon the distinction between government and state there, and I think that's really important. You're right.
Yep. So, Francis or Pierre, do you guys have anything to add to this topic of the government shutdown? I can't see Francis because
no, I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. Yeah, so Francis had to his battery died, so he had to go audio only. Let's see, 118. Yeah, we better shut it down. I was going to do maybe one more topic, but we've already gone an hour here. So, guys, just wanted to say thanks so much for joining us. We had such a great time, so much good conversation here, you guys. I mean, all this good talk about the real reasons why we got into Bitcoin. This is what really makes me happy. So, guys, thanks again so much for joining. We had over 1,200 live viewers here. We have people in the chat scrolling by. We had some great conversation, had a few trolls, but had a lot of funny stuff in there. I think one of my favorite comments was KFC instead of KYC people, but then that just might make you hungry. So I want to thank so much our panelists, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for donating your time to all of these people, to the audience, to hopefully help everybody learn. Francis, please tell us more about where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at @FrancisPouliot_. That's usually where I post all of my stuff. And my businesses are Bills, so that's bills.com, and Cadillacsy.com.
You know what, guys? Let's just do one bonus. Let's do one bonus topic. Tone says he's a little bit busy, so sorry, Francis, for jumping the gun. I hope you guys have a few more minutes. I just want to do one more topic. So let's just do one more topic. Everybody's here. Everybody's having a good time. Got over 1,100 viewers. Let's just do one more topic. Of Bitpay.
Can we talk about how all of this is going to move towards some kind of social justice?
Well, that's a different show, man. That's a different show. We're gonna cover the news here. So we got one more
on my show. You can come on my show, Russ.
I'll love it. I'll love it. Just send me a link.
Oh, dude, that's going to be an awesome interview, by the way. Gabriel interviewing Russell, that would be a good one. You guys need to get that one going. I will +1 that. So let's just do one final topic here, guys. Let's just talk about BitPay here. Switching to BIP 70, adding their network fee, kind of really upsetting everybody. Just adding this almost doubling everybody's fees for transferring money, from transferring Bitcoin from the BitPay debit card to the BitPay from the BitPay wallet to the BitPay debit card. Sorry. Yeah, it's just crazy things happening. I'm not sure what the heck BitPay is thinking. So let's get Francis's opinion first here. Francis, what the heck did BitPay do? And I know that you guys over there at Bills have a much better way of understanding fees and using the proper BIP for creating QR codes and things like that. So maybe you can go in just to a little bit about what the heck BitPay did and why you think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, so, okay, just a sec. So basically, what BitPay did is they made, well, other than, ruining their opportunity of becoming a super great Bitcoin company. They had all the funding, they had all the momentum, other than basically screwing everything up for them or for their users. What they did recently was they made mandatory a certain format of invoice called like a BIP70 format. So, I mean, what BIP70 is essentially kind of a mechanism for you to exchange signed messages with the with a merchant using X509 certificates. And this was meant to be used kind of as a way to go around man-in-the-middle attacks. But the way they, and you know, there's many technical problems with it that are related to privacy. People think that it's not really secure. It's kind of the false sense of security because, you know, if your kind of website gets hacked, then, you know, obviously you're kind of, you can get your certificate hacked or the certificate authority hacked or something like that, or you can still have some fraud going on there. So other than that, I mean, I don't know that they've adopted segwit yet, which makes absolutely, it would make, yeah, okay. So it makes absolutely no sense because they're getting all these small inputs, right? So kind of when they're signing transactions off, they probably always batch them. I'm sure they always batch them out, but they're kind of, they don't come, you know, you compound basically that fee saving. If you get a lot of tiny inputs, you have to do a lot more signatures normally. So they should definitely be onto segwit. I don't understand why they're not fully implementing the Lightning Network and the business that drives it entirely. So in terms of BIP70, what it does now is that if you don't have a BIP70 wallet, you can kind of need to have two phones because you need to manually kind of extract the Bitcoin address from this thing and then the fee and then paste it somewhere else. Because of the way BIP70 works, you can still send Bitcoins to that address, I believe. Please don't do that without testing first. I think that's how it works. So it's kind of an obsolete system and it's not been adopted at all. And it's not good. So what we're doing at Builds is a bit different. Maybe I'll post it. I posted it on Twitter today. So what we do is we use PGP instead of certificates to cryptographically sign invoices. And the users can basically, the point is that you can verify that an invoice came from someone else. So what you're looking for is you're looking for authentication, right? So, you know, phishing sites like blockchain.info should have a way to, you know, cryptographically is just the same way when you download software, you want to verify where it's coming from. You can verify the integrity of a message. And essentially what it's trying to solve, the problem, both BIP70 and both my PGP-based signing thing is the man-in-the-middle attack problem, because the most likely way you're to get hacked, your Bitcoins, is that your browser is going to get hacked. And then some hacker is going to replace all the Bitcoin addresses on the website by his. So you think you're sending Bitcoins to BitPay. It's the same website as BitPay. It's the same URL, but they've just replaced using some code on the website. For example, using a plugin or something like that, or some JavaScript. They've changed the BitPay's address for your address. So this is kind of what you're trying to avoid. But generally, this kind of ties into BitPay making really bad decisions over and over and really not innovating, and just kind of, they should be doing research on fee selection and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a really terrible company. As far as I'm concerned, I'm very disappointed. And if I had more time, I was just saying exactly what Pierre is doing for Coinbase. I would run for CEO of BitPay. Unfortunately, I don't think the investors care, because from what I've heard, the investors have already written it off as a loss. So I don't think they would even care to have me replace not Pierre, as Pierre, because I don't know. I think it's just a matter of time before they go out of business. And the card must really be hitting them right now. Actually, their card was a really popular product, so I wouldn't put too much faith in BitPay lasting too much longer.
Yeah, it just seems really crazy with these extra fees and this BIP70. Just to kind of let people know, you can no longer transfer Bitcoin into your BitPay debit card unless you have an actual BIP70 compatible wallet, which of course there's only a few, right? Like BitPay and pretty much. And so you have to transfer your Bitcoin into the BitPay wallet. And then from there, you can transfer from your BitPay wallet to your BitPay debit card. But again, because of this, ever since this new BIP70 that they switched to, in addition to not being able to switch, in addition to be able to not just send your Bitcoin to your Bitcoin debit card, you will actually have to pay these additional fees, like this network fee or whatever they're calling it. This, in addition to the actual miner fee, you're paying BitPay this $20 to $30 insane fee. It's just ridiculous. I think somebody tried to send $260 and had a $100 fee. They tried to send $260 from the BitPay wallet to the BitPay debit card and ended up paying $100 in fees. Now, I know that that's absolutely insanely ridiculous, because I can send, you know, to a Coinbase or to a BitPay debit card. I can right now send hundreds and hundreds of dollars to the card, you know, maybe make it maybe take 6 hours to a day. I can send it for a couple hundred Satoshis per byte. I mean, $8. $5 to $8, something just super small, but they're adding these huge fees on, and I don't know what their plan is. To me, it just seems like they're attacking their own customers. And in addition to this, real quick, sorry, Russell.
Go ahead.
In addition to this, they're now also passing fees off to customers. So if you use BitPay as a merchant processor, your customers are now getting double charged as well. So it's just completely crazy. I just feel like they're completely destroying their business model and shooting themselves in the foot really bad. Go ahead, Russell.
Well, look, again, this isn't so much an issue as a symptom. We're still like dealing with people that don't understand the real value proposition of Bitcoin's a store of value. You're not going to go out and buy a bunch of juju fruits, guys. Don't use it. They're missing the whole point of what this is. And we've conflated it, I think, by playing into this in a certain way. I don't care what happens to BitPay, honestly. I don't. I'm still concerned about keeping Bitcoin as a store of value. I'll move it into whatever, a government fiat or whatever. It doesn't matter. When I decide to move it out, that's when it matters to me. And I do like the Lightning Network. I mean, obviously, it's going to reduce fees overall, but still, we're going to find ourselves moving into microtransactions and all these things. And I don't know if I want all these smart contracts and microtransactions automatically being debited straight from my store of value. You know what I mean? That kind of access to my account.
Absolutely. And I think that it's still, we still have to criticize these companies, though, for these horrible decisions, because, at the end of the day, there are people that are going to get affected. There are people that are going to get hurt. And we got to let these people know that, look, what they're doing is not right. This is not representing Bitcoin. BitPay does not represent Bitcoin. There are better solutions out there. But unfortunately, for the US, we only got Coinbase and BitPay, if you want to actually use a debit card. And so we just kind of have to wait for competitors to step up and hope that that's going to happen. But Pierre, let's get your thoughts on this so far. What do you think on the conversation so far and BitPay making these horrible decisions with BIP 70 charging all these additional fees?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I agree with Francis. BIP 70 was a trash piece of software, malware that was put into Bitcoin by Mike Hearn before he thankfully left. And so I think that Francis is definitely on the right track with using his PGP system. Oh, and I also want to mention Gavin was involved with that. It was not just Mike Hearn. Thank you, Francis, for reminding me. So thankfully they're both gone. But anyway, the approach of using PGP is much better. And really, these things should not be like in Bitcoin itself. I think that there's too much of people trying to shoehorn crap into BIPs that are like, there's a layer above Bitcoin's protocol where we can talk about, okay, let's talk about identity. Let's talk about, payment processing for merchants and refunds and all this stuff that it doesn't belong in the referenced implementation per se. It belongs in merchant tools that are working on top of Bitcoin. But
which BitPay would actually create instead of shoehorning BIP 70 into things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that BitPay, they started going on to ridiculous side projects. I remember Stephen Pierre, the CEO, had a project that was called Foxtrot, which was some kind of network DNS thing that had network routing that had no relation to BitPay's core business at all. But he was working on it instead of actually creating value in the business. And then they started going on about a bank chain, so blockchain technology for banks, because they thought that Bitcoin was in a permanent bear market and would never recover. So they were trying to pivot into that crap. So I think that the leadership at BitPay is really flawed, and I would love to see Francis take it over. But unfortunately, they raised a $40 million round from some suckers who thought that, oh, BitPay, Bitcoin, crypto, this is exciting. So they got bailed out again, and I'm sure they'll waste it on some other nonsense and continue to flounder, despite having a great business and I think a great market opportunity. they really managed to fail despite the product market fit.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note, well, we're sorry, Russell, real quick. I think it's really important to note that both Coinbase and BitPay still don't have any open source developers on their payroll. Not one. And they don't have any commits almost, to actual Bitcoin Core. It's just ridiculous that they're making they're literally VCing hundreds of millions of dollars and they can't even devote a single developer.
Because they got a monopoly. They could do what they want.
They're definitely not a monopoly. Definitely not.
Yeah, no.
No, they can definitely be displaced.
No, we're talking about Coinbase, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but BitPay doesn't for sure. Coinbase neither, actually.
Look, I'm really interested, like what Pierre thinks about moving towards this. I forget what BIP proposal it was, Jimmy's, about changing the notation. What do you guys think is going to be the end result of this? I'm excited about this one.
Pierre,
yeah, I'm all for
really
it.
I think it should be a BIP at all.
Move to bits.
You think it should be a BIP, Pierre?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think that's a great move.
As a BIP, or just why is a BIP not as just industry standard?
It's an informational BIP. Though. Let's make that clear, Francis. It's just an informational BIP. There's no code or anything. So I think that's fine.
Well, okay. I mean, on that note, I don't think there should be informational BIPs. I think that's kind of like that's weird. But I mean, it's the Bitcoin improvement proposal. Like the scope of it has blown out so far that now it can be anything from the protocol to how many decimal places we use. So I think that's kind of silly that it's. But if it is what it is.
Yep.
But
okay.
My personal take is milli Bitcoin would be much better because it's much more in tune with like millimeter and milligram and that kind of stuff.
They're too big.
Francis is from Canada, ladies and gentlemen, just to remind you.
Millibits are already too big. We need to go straight to micro as far as I'm concerned.
Agree.
Yep, awesome. So I think we can agree. We definitely have some unit bias here going on, with things like Ripple and the top 10 coins now all being single digit in price, but of course having hundreds and hundreds of billions of tokens of non-mineable tokens. So very, very crazy stuff. Any other comments on this topic?
Yes, I haven't gone yet.
Oh, sorry, Gabriel. We forgot about Gabriel. Go ahead.
I just kind of wanted to take this in a little bit of a larger context. BitPay for me is the classic poster child of the disconnect between Silicon Valley and Bitcoin. Crypto anarchy and corporate technocrat culture. That is a very, very distinct break in philosophy, totally different. And the way that Bitcoin and Coinbase is another good example. BitPay, the way it's run is emblematic of the misconceptions and incorrect assumptions at the core of Silicon Valley as it applies to cryptographic monies. And we're going to continue to see this play out as Silicon Valley reaches the end of its relevance in the world. I think it's going to take at least 20 years because there's a lot of momentum still and a lot of capital there. But I'm relatively certain that technological, how do I put it, industrial capacity will continue to decentralize away out of its current silos. And Silicon Valley is the, shining white lighthouse on the hill that has been completely co-opted by the surveillance state and corporatocracy and crony capitalism. And Bitcoin is here to undermine it. And they had no idea. They thought it was just another tech sector like social media or mobile tech or, delivering salads on a unicycle or some shit. And actually it's here to destroy their entire way of life. And it's really fun to see companies like this totally fail. when the solutions are actually very simple and right in front of them, and it's completely blinders and thinking they know better, and a philosophical disconnect preventing them from success. And it'll be fun to watch them completely collapse, and watch the business models like on-ramps and off-ramps, payment, are completely legitimate and needed. It'll be fun to watch them being taken up by competent companies over the next 8 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, you know, when I was in my mid-20s or so, like I caught the tech crunch bug too. And I wanted to learn about all the new startups in Silicon Valley, but all how we can, like, you know, make these trucks that can like give people food. It's just such basic like concepts that they're just turning over
Uber for buses, right?
Yeah, Uber for buses, and it's just nuts, like what they're doing over there. Obviously, I'm very happy with my Uber and my Lyft. Thanks for that, guys. But outside of that, don't really use too many Silicon Valley inventions. So very, very cool. Does anybody else have any topic? Russell, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the biggest 800-pound gorilla here is still the whole financial markets, right? We've financialized our whole economy. GM makes more of their money on the financing wing than they do making damn cars. And I think that's true of a lot of things. What we're looking at, though, what they're going to be dealing with is I heard it was like $200 trillion worth of outdated infrastructure, legacy infrastructure. That's money that's going to be lost somewhere. And as this stuff moves forward, and it's going to move forward because Bitcoin's not stopping for any nation, not China, not, you know, BitPay, none of these guys. It's moving forward, and you know, they're going to find themselves at a massive loss here. I'm wondering what they're going to do. What are you going to do? They're going to start dumping this stuff like mad and trying to find a way to secure their value. And the only value that's going to be secure is going to be in Bitcoin.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
I just want to say just a second, Gabriel nailed it completely, right? So good job, Gabriel. That was amazing.
Francis, elaborate.
Oh no, I just thought that the whole this is also something that I've been seeing is there is kind of two mentalities, right? That and you said it exactly. For them, Bitcoin was just another sector like social media, like IoT, like artificial intelligence, and they just went through the same kind of pipeline of the incubator, the angel round, the seed round, and they're just doing what they were supposed to be doing. And instead of going through kind of more of a model where like, how is my business making Bitcoin like more awesome, and like how can I integrate all those new technologies in my business? And you know, they should have been looking at Bitcoin as this future world dominating currency and financial system, and they should have been experimenting on how to get the best possible experience, you know, taking feedback from the community, getting super close. You know, I think a lot of their developers have left recently, like some Bitcoin.js guys left BitPay, you know, and I think it really all comes down to what Gabriel said. It's not a Bitcoin company. It's just a tech company that was into Bitcoin. And it really doesn't seem like the leadership is like all that much into Bitcoin. And I see Coinbase as being kind of the same as well. In fact, I'm pretty sure they were the same incubator at the same time in Silicon Valley. Y Combinator, I think, or Plug and Play or something like that. Or I mean, definitely similar times, and you know, kind of knowing each other. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of great companies that are coming up that are more cypherpunk oriented. I mean, I like to think of my own business, Bills, in that category. I like to think of Rodolfo Novak's business in that category. Also, guys, that I saw, there's just this name. Samurai is also in that category. So yeah, these are the kind of businesses that I think will, as Gabriel said, there's a lot of money, and it takes a while for all of the businesses to fail and for them to run out of money. So in that respect, Silicon Valley is going to not change for a little while. And but I mean, I think the businesses that are more agile, like Samurai, that are always innovating the new features, they're going to be the ones that they're the ones that I would buy into, because they're the ones that I am 100% sure are going to be there in 10 years, because I can already see that they're being adaptive and they're working with the current and not against Bitcoin, which is what I tell financial institutions all the time as well. Like BitPay is behaving like one of those legacy financial institutions. Like Bitcoin is a tsunami, and you know, you can either, you know, surf and try to make it, you know, to the beach, or you can just stay there and like get you know, drown. And this is what BitPay is doing. And this is indicative of just the Silicon Valley mentality.
But it really is. It really is. Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah, but the thing I think that rang with me in terms of what Gabriel was talking about was this technocrat. The technocrats themselves are another form of this expert culture. They're going to take hold of this and try to recreate what they've learned. And this is something totally different. They're not going to reinvent what's already been. This is totally new. And, you know, again, they're talking about how everybody's running through that same innovation process, which itself is kind of monopolized. I hate to throw the word out there, but that's all we have. We all know that the venture capitalists, you know, they have to be a certain amount of wealthy in order to
institutionalized maybe is a better word, maybe.
Well, you know, look, you know, you say potato, I say potato, but you know, at the end of the day,
trying to achieve market dominance. I mean, it's good corporate practice, right? It's profit.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the logic, but it's rationalized by this idea that we have a free market, which presupposes the whole monopoly issue I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is, you know, clearly the technocrats and expert culture, there's a tyranny of experts, I think. We need them. They're informed. People that actually on the ground touching this technology and moving it forward is important. But we got to beware. We shouldn't fall prey to this poverty of imagination about what's going to happen after this.
Yep. Well, I think we can definitely close out this topic. I just want to say I'm really looking forward to Bitcoin kind of removing this geography, right? This geography-based place, like Gabriel was saying, how Silicon Valley is the current big place, right, for tech. I'm hoping that Bitcoin will just make that irrelevant, right? It doesn't matter where you live. You don't have to go to Silicon Valley to create a Bitcoin company. You can create a Bitcoin company anywhere, right? So that's what I'm hoping that will help with and just get rid of this crazy financialization of everything. And so we'll see how that goes. But guys, I think we can wrap it up. We got to let Tone Vase do his market analysis at some point. So thanks again, guys, so much for joining. Francis, one more time, man, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, really just go on Twitter at @FrancisPouliot_ or bills.com or catalaxy with a y.com.
Yep. And as you guys can tell, Francis really knows his stuff. I mean, you know, he's got a Bitcoin company. He's been in the space for many years. And, you know, it's just all about being in the space, guys. You know, find people like Francis that you can learn from, because we all were noobs at some point. We all started out, you know, not knowing stuff at some point. And so definitely just find some people that are honest, that you can follow, that have integrity, that don't change their tone as the wind blows, you know. So very, very important. Gabriel, where can we find out more information about you, sir?
I'm right here on the World Crypto Network as often as I can be, which is not that often lately, but you know, Bitcoin news is a wonderful place to come on a Sunday. Twitter is the best place to follow what I'm up to, my thoughts. I love to share things and learn new things from wonderful people out there. So at Gabriel DeVine, check me out and say hi.
Absolutely, guys. Check him out. And if we can maybe get a poll going for Gabriel to restart a new podcast or something, that would be great. Sick of Gabriel not having a podcast, but no, very awesome stuff, guys. Thanks so much, Gabriel, for joining.
Actually, I have a new project in the works, but it's a little bit of a larger one, so it's going to take a little bit longer, but I think you'll really dig it.
Awesome. We're definitely looking forward to more commentary in the Bitcoin and crypto space from Gabriel. So thank you for that. Mr. Pierre Rashard, you guys got to check out his Noted podcast. If you haven't yet, it really is kind of becoming one of the standard podcasts that you can rely on, that you can get real information from real experts and not just talking heads like myself. Pierre, where can we find out more about you?
Yeah. So Noted podcast, NODED. is at noted.org. You can follow me on Twitter at Pierre_Rashard. And follow my co-host on the Noted podcast, Bitstein, on Twitter as well.
Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
and I should plug the NakamotoInstitute.org, where we've collected all of the writings of Satoshi. And we've got a bunch of other things on there aside from Satoshi. So definitely go check it out and read as much as you can.
Absolutely, guys. Read as much as you can. That's what's key in this space, is to read. People, verify. Don't trust. Don't trust. Let's go ahead and ask Russell. Russell, where can we find out more about you, Mr. Russell Spears?
Well, look, I have a number of podcasts. I don't tend to, you know, podcast often, only until I have something I actually want to say. But I actually went and prepared for this. I actually took audio notes, and it's like 2 hours. So I'm just going to basically post that shit. And
awesome,
but you can probably catch me in a debate with Gabriel soon.
Yes, awesome. No, you guys got to check out Russell
Or
Spears' podcast.
conversation, dialogue.
Yes, absolutely. You guys got to check out Russell Spears' podcast. It's really great. You know, he just takes down the notes from the day, from the week, and just gives you his opinions. Very good stuff. Very good recap of what's going on. So very good opinions. Make sure you guys to check that out. I will have everybody's Twitter handle in the show notes after this. I don't usually put them in until the end because I never know really who's going to show up. I just kind of ask people and hope for the best, cross my fingers. So another great show, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a great time again on our ritual on this Sunday talking Bitcoin. So thanks again, guys, so much for joining us. Thanks so much for my panelists, for the chat, for everybody here. Catch Tone Vase next with his market analysis over there on his channel. And, we'll be back here again every Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific talking more Bitcoin. So, guys, until next time, please keep talking Bitcoin.
Keep talking Bitcoin.
See you later.
Keep talking Bitcoin.